Okay, so video for the latest release by 7 Hertz. It's a collaboration with Crinacle. It's called the Dioko. It is a $99 set of planars, which makes it the most affordable that I'm aware of, and that is a big selling point. It's got some other very good selling points. Let me go ahead and open this up. Got the glove on one hand because it's got finger magnets on the outside. Very beautiful, but I don't want to be getting fingerprints in the middle of my own video because that'll make me feel sad. Take that case out. The branding, the only thing you can see obviously is the sticker that they put on the side of the box, Crinacle X 7 Hertz Dioko, and that's the box. It comes in a case that is the same as the Yan Yan Moonlight, which I said in my Yan Yan video, please start using these and sell them separately also because I absolutely love this case. So a $99 set coming in a case like this is just gilding the lily. It's just a little bit more of the awesomeness. Spidergraph will be coming up. You can check the chapters below if you want. Also, we'll talk about music, of course. Open this up. You've got a sandwich bag. Some people have been joking about that. It's easy to see. You're not going to mistake it. Yellow bag with multiple color tips. They all appear to be silicone. The cores don't seem to be any different, so I don't know. Some of them might fit. As everybody knows, I usually do all my evaluations with CP100s by SpinFit. I continue to do that, and I do that with this set. I kept this original one. I mean, they finished this up. Warranty card and description of the set. 16 ohm, 0.78, 2-pin, 14.6 millimeter driver. So it's got a new driver. I might throw up an image right about now. It certainly looks quite nice. So this is definitely not same face of some of the sets that have been coming out recently. Oh, by the way, the cable does have this. Why do I always wear the same shirt when I do these reviews? Because these things stick and rip on some of my very nice Tommy Hilfiger and Versace shirts, and I'm not going to do that anymore, so I'll just keep wearing the same shirt and rip it to pieces. As you can see, it's already ripping to pieces. Now, the cable itself doesn't have any branding on it, except for 7 Hertz's branding. This one says Sound Notes, I guess. I don't know what Sound Notes is. Cable is something familiar. I'm not a big cable person. The Y split is really tight, which it should be, because when you put it in a spot where you want it to be, because that's where it should be, it doesn't just fall away. So the Y split is functional. Better than that is it appears that when you get to the point where there's sometimes rubber on the outside, it's so subtle I almost didn't know it's there. So if you're a person that doesn't like those rubber bands, unless you're really looking close, you can't even tell that that exists. In fact, I did a video before this that I had to delete because I had an error, and I thought and misspoke that this didn't have hooks. It does, but it's very, very subtle. It's actually well done. The shells themselves are absolutely gorgeous. This is why I'm wearing the gloves. Reflective. They got a kind of a purple hue, and it's reflecting light. It's very nice. Again, it's a 2-pin. The 2-pin is flush. The tips that come with this are kind of cool. They're the sticky that are kind of like what came with our Sonics, or the Alza, Sedna, something that I actually like, and they're over there. But again, I do my reviews with CP100 just for reference. Take that tip off. See, it's got the metal, and then behind that, I believe it's got a screen with mesh, and then there's another dampening nozzle filter, maybe high or medium density, I'm not really sure. Let's look at it. I maybe threw some pictures up while you're looking at it. Let's go ahead and turn and take a look at the graph without making you feel sick. Let me go ahead and rotate over here. My target is on the background because I always use my target. This is more towards Crinacle's target. It's got a subtle bass with glide. It's sub bass over mid bass. It corrects before 200 Hertz, takes a nice glide across the mids, and then it takes its gain where it usually does, around 1K. I should be throwing this over the top of the screen. The upper mids to 4K are actually quite nice. It's better than the original 7 Hertz that I had on the graph. It starts to take a cut in what is essentially all harmonics for my library, and 5K is reduced, and it goes all the way till about 8K. Accuracy of these graphs is somewhat questionable, but it's consistent with my measurement and also to my ear. So it's got a little bit of energy, just past 8K, but that's likely because the insertion depth moves that peak related to the measurement. It's a relic of the measurement, so I'm not getting any problems with that. It's actually not really elevated as much as some prior graphs that I've seen, and it's got energy that goes all the way up the scale. So that's the frequency graph. Let me rotate back over here. I'm going to talk about a spider graph next. I love spider graphs. It puts several sets together in a easy to understand, for me, graph, and a lot of my viewers like it, and I can kind of say what I like and do it kind of rather quickly, simply, and speaking while you're looking, and I'll move stuff around. ADHD, it's real. If you want to know before you get into all that, do I recommend this set? It's $99. It comes in a bonkers case. It's one of the better fitting that I've ever listened to, especially with Planar Wars. It's got, I'll talk about that in Spider. Do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. It's hard not to. It's not doing anything wrong. I think it's great for certain libraries and less so for others, but that would be every single piece of gear that's on my table that I spent lots of money for and love and talk about repeatedly. Some things do some things better than other things. It's the way it is. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next phase. Spidergraph coming up. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the Spidergraph. Before we do that, 14.6 millimeter planar driver, double-sided N55 magnet. It certainly looks like a nice driver, and it's not the same as the prior version. This is another look at the set. This is the case. It's another look. 14.6 collaboration with Crinacle. CNC aluminum. This is, the tempered glass would be different. The front end looks very similar to the original with maybe slightly different shaping of the forward chamber. I'm not really sure. Let's go ahead and get to the Spidergraph. Here we go. Starting with the base. With a library like mine that you're all familiar with, which has got hip-hop, rock and roll, that goes from classic all the way to pretty much grunge, R&B, some EDM, plenty of hip-hop, and Bob Marley, reggae, mostly Bob Marley when it comes to reggae. With a library like mine, I'm viewing it like this. I think that the bass on the Hook X is still my favorite. I like it. I find it to be very musical. And after that, I'd probably say this S12. I think that those two sets are, if you really want a meaty low end note weight, and some of the low frequency instruments in a library similar to mine, I would think that those would be the two options that you would probably go for. As we move towards the mids, this is where the Dioko starts to step up because of the way that Crinacle tunes, going back to the Dusk. When you take something and you tamp and push down the mid bass and you gently elevate the sub bass, one of the good results that you're going to get is you're going to clean up, for some people, depending on how you like it, the perception of the vocals. They might be slightly dry because they're a little bit thinner, but it gives, for people that have K-pop, J-pop, and other libraries, even classical, it kind of cleans up the rest of the replay without domineering low end. So there's not really a lot in the sub bass, but the mids of the Dioko are actually quite good. I thought that the T1 Max were probably the best prior to that, just because of the very neutralist tuning, but I think that overall, between the sub bass and the upper mids, I think that the Dioko is probably the best that you can get. The fact that it's $99 is kind of bonkers. Next would be the treble. Everybody knows I'm a huge Hook X fan. I'm a huge fan of that. I think that the treble, I don't know what's actually doing that, PAs or something else. I'm a huge fan. I think the T1 Max treble is quite good. I think the Dioko's treble is good. Take these with a grain of salt. There's nothing that's not good. It's just different flavors. So I think that the Dioko's treble is, for some, it's going to be their favorite. For others, it won't. It's kind of a same as everything else. I think that the resolution is where the Dioko steps out again. This is probably related to the fact that the mid bass is cut down a little bit, and that's giving you, in your mind and your ear, a little more attention to the ear gain region and beyond. It's giving a sense of more clarity to things like Ozzy Osbourne. Randy Rhoads playing a track called D, which is like an acoustic classical exercise that he's doing, and it recorded. There's finger slides on that, and on the Dioko it's as clear as I've heard on any of the planars. So it seems like the Resolute piano keys, everything that I listen to for an Easter egg, like that thing is hard to catch. The left channel beep, Want to Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson at about 129 to 131. It gets nailed by the Dioko. So I think the strength of the Dioko is in the mids and in the res so far. I think the stage is the Hook X. I think not far behind that is Dioko. I think that I'm skewed in my bias slightly because I like the presentation of the Hook X. So the stage is really different. Maybe not. To my ears, it sounds like the Hook X is just slightly better, but that's maybe some bias right there. I think the tonality of the Hook X, as I mentioned before, is my favorite. I put the Dioko just behind that because as many people out there that like the dusk and like some of Corinne's other collabs and that tuning, that's your thing, that's your jam. I don't have a problem with it. I like a little bit more mid-bass, but everybody knows that for a long time. I can see this as being a set. I think that everything else, the S12, the 7 Hertz, the T1 Max, is a take it or leave it thing. I know why people love the Hook X, and there's some huge fans of it, and I can see a lot of people coming along in a few months that are going to be talking about how they love the tonality of the Dioko, and I'll get it. Hook X is my thing. I can see Dioko being something a lot of people like. Get to the value, and there's a massive gap here because this is $99. Just on that, it's the easiest rec of all of these sets because it's $99. You get the benefit of a planar. It's possibly the most resolving of all of them, and you're getting it for a price that's $30 at least. I think the S12 is $130 on sale, or more, less than the next most cheapest planar, so it's quite affordable. Comes in a great case. It seems to be well built. So just to refresh, I think the bass is the Hook X. People know me. I think the mids are Dioko. Related to the tuning of the low end, it gives more clarity to the mids. Also, the upper mids are actually quite on target for me. I think the treble is the Hook X. It's the sweet special sauce for me. I think resolution is Dioko. I think they nailed it with this. And I think fit has a part to do with that too. You're able to perceive this better than the original. If you get earphones and you have good fit, but if you move your head not so much, sometimes you can break a seal and not really know it. And the effect of that is you get kind of an air sound and a grainy and a lower res sound. So the 7 Hertz original for me sounded great, but there'd be times where I'd lose a seal and not really notice it, but it would impact the quality of the sound. The Dioko's fit is excellent, and so you're not going to ever suffer from that. So I feel like the resolution on that's best. Stage, I like the Hook X, tonality Hook X, and the value is completely Dioko all the way. So that's the spider chart. Go ahead and move on, talk about some music, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, let's talk about music, since these are music replay devices. It's the most important thing. Starting with the low end bass, everybody's familiar with Big Boy Killjoy by now. It's got a triple drop followed by a 4-string bass guitar. The bass on this set is not pronounced really. It's slightly sub-bass focused. The drop actually sounded fine, not as impactful as other sets, but on its balance it sounded fine. When the 4-string bassist comes in, there's where the tuning with the mid-bass is a little bit light. It sounds accurate. For a person that loves bass, I want a little bit more meat. However, this kind of brings me to the topic that if you are an owner of the Hook X, which is that set right there, and I love that set, and there's a lot of people that watch my channel that love that set. If you want a planar that is different from the Hook X clearly and has its own benefits, then you're looking at it right now up on top of the Jotunheim 2. The bass profile is different. The clarity of the mids is better on the Dioko than it is on the Hook X. The treble is to taste. People talking about good or bad treble is really kind of cringy because you have no idea people's hearing, their library, their listening level. So there's a lot of things that can be done with treble. There's less that can be done with mids and bass without totally messing stuff up. I think that if you've got the Hook X and you're a fan of it and you really are digging the whole planar thing, because it's the first thing to come along in years it's actually really different, I would definitely say you ought to try the Dioko because it is a good and different replay from the Hook X. They're not redundant at all. The Hook X does Big Boy Killjoy excellent. The Dioko does it differently. Excellent depends on what you like and what's your taste. So the bass is, triple drops are there. They're not as pronounced, but they're not unnatural. The 4-string bass guitar is not as meaty as I'd like it to be, but it is accurate. There's no weird thing like with the mid-bass tuck or something like that. As we get to Black Sabbath Massive Reality, there's a part where there's a drummer and a bassists that are kind of doing solos on top of each other, and there's some masking and go on. I talk about this all the time with dynamic drivers. It's really hard to, you just kind of accept that that sounds kind of like a low-res vinyl rip when it in fact is an awesome quality file. And Planars, the Tin Hi-Fi P1, the first one, I think 2.5 years ago, I didn't like it, never wrecked it, but that really opened my eyes to what planar can do. It's fast, it's clean, it's precise. You can focus on the drummer. Bassist doesn't get in the way, or vice versa, or just enjoy the whole track because that is not getting clouded up, that is not veiling across the rest of the replay. That's a strength of planar. I think that the Dioko actually does this quite well. It's drums and it's basses that should get impacted by the mid-bass, but it's very fast, and there's no mid-bass tuck, and I think it sounds good and clean and planar-like, which is superior to any dynamic drivers, in my opinion. Next thing would be mid-bass check, which would be Sultans of Swing. This is really kind of talking and checking about position, about the bassist, because if you take an EQ or anything that can adjust the frequency and you listen to a track like this or something you're familiar with, for me it's this one, and you pull up and down the mid bass between 100 and 300 hertz to 350 hertz, you can give the sense of the bassist actually sounding in your mind stage, stepping forward, crowding Mark Knopfler, the vocalist who's playing an iconic lead guitar. And if you pull that back, more polite in the way that Crinacle often tunes, it sounds like the bassist has stepped back a little, and that passes some maybe clarity to the vocalist and the guitarist. So that's an ideal tuning for some. I prefer a little bit more meat. Everybody knows that and have known that for years, but it's not an unnatural replay, and I think it sounds good. And it's definitely different from the Hook X. So I think it sounds good. That's the bass. As we move forward and we get to the mid-frequencies are dominated in my library because it's a rock-dominated hip-hop. There's vocalists everywhere. One of the albums that I use is Fleetwood Mac Rumors because we got 2 male and 2 female vocalists, a female in the front, 3 in the back, male, female, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks. If there's an oddity, if there's too much mid-bass, you're going to lift up and kind of bloat the vocals. You put a husk on male vocals in particular, unnaturally so. It literally is the definition of the word bloat, how it affects vocals. My preferred tuning is right on the edge of that. This is back a little further, and this is what sometimes might make this seem as a vocal-centric kind of set because it leaves the mids alone. There's not a lot of elevation in the mid-bass. In the mids are clean, and then the upper mid gain is pretty reasonable. There's no jutting or anything odd going on there. So the area between 150, 300 hertz, and then to 1.5K pretty much is where the fundamentals cut off for male and females. It's all treated very nice. And then the gain region where you start to boost up the harmonics is not obnoxious. So you've got a very nice vocal replay. And then that same tuning, when it's applied to electric guitars and other things, you give a balance. Let's look at this one more time for a second. Graphs don't tell the whole story. They can't tell you the technical accuracy or anything else like that, but they do tell you lots of things. And when you have a mid-bass and mids, and then an upper mids like that, and then extension that goes that way, you're not pushing anything over anything else. The sub-bass is not dominating over the mid-bass. The mid-bass is not encroaching into the mids. The mids to upper mids is not overly tuned and is going to result in something like a shout. There's no darkness coming. There's no sheen or shine or overly shimmering sound coming from cymbals because there's not a giant boost between 5 and 15K that's bigger than the ear gain region. Usually good tuning, the ear gain region to about 4K to 5K should really be the peak, and then you should be slowly cascading off there because you're handling the diminishing sound, the decay of sounds. It shouldn't ever get bigger than the initial impact or the start of the sound. The harmonic decay should in fact decay and die away, and tuning like you're looking at right there actually treats it right. I think I'll leave it there. I've probably talked long enough. Female vocals, the Wilson sisters, they sound great on this. I started feeling like this is really a vocal-centric set. Based on my library and the way that I listen to music, I would define this as a vocal-centric set. Treble is good for live stuff. if I can find Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland, all along the Watchtower. There's 3 solos. You can tell the quality because of production, the way that they put this together. I can pick it up. As I get to the kick drum on Led Zeppelin, this album right here, it's not as impactful as I'd like it, but the tuning is kind of indicating that that's coming. That's okay. If you got the Hook X, you'd definitely be fine. The tuning of this is very good for live stuff, like Little Feat, Waiting for Columbus, One More from the Road, Frampton Comes Alive, U2, live album. That sense of space and being amongst a crowd of people on your left and right, and seems to be your back left and your back right, is possible with sets that are tuned like this. And I actually enjoyed the replay of the Leonard Skinner one in particular, listening to this set. So I'll go ahead and summarize. I think that the bass is good. It's to taste. It's not impacting in a negative way anything. I'd like a little more meat. I think the mids are spot on. I think the treble is pretty close to spot on. I don't have any nitpicks with it where I say, you know, that shimmer on that's a little bit too much. Or those guitar solos can get slightly fatiguing. I found none of that really. Treble is fine. The overtones of electric guitars with distortion pedals. Again, cymbals, the shimmer can sound a little too long, a little too intense. Where the strike is happening, shouldn't sound so much slaved to the shimmer. I think that this set sounds good. And then we get back to the $99, the build quality, the new driver. It's an easy rec. Out of the sets that I've reviewed or had in my possession from Crinacle, I'd say my favorite all time would be the original Dawn by Fearless, and then I would say this would be my favorite after that. And because this is $100 and that was $1,200, this would be the easiest rec of a Crinacle set that I've touched so far. And if you have the Hook X, I would definitely recommend it because you're liking planar, you want to see what planar can do. It's a different take on it, and it's a good take on it, and it's definitely going to appeal to a segment of the hobby that has a library that is slightly different from mine, I would say. So that's the Dioko from Crinacle, and I'm out.